Welcome to another edition of House of Horns. My name is Victor Corona, aka Victor Producer, and joining me as always is Gilbert Manzano, who does it for Sports Illustrated, MMQB. Gilbert, I usually ask you, hey, how are you doing? But I kind of know because I was able to see you yesterday. We were at Rams camp, which is why we're doing this episode today. But Gilbert, since I haven't seen you in a day, how are things with you, sir?
Much better. I feel a little relaxed where I didn't have to go out and stand on a football field for 2 hours. Actually, yesterday was like 5, 6 hours. We went to Raiders in the morning, Rams in the late afternoon period, and all last week I went to a lot of practices. But I shouldn't complain. But it was nice to, get some work done at home. A little faster, a little more efficient. But we got a lot to talk about because we did see a whole lot from the LA Rams yesterday at LMU.
Yeah, we got a lot to get into in this episode as we talked about. We got the recap of our visit at LMU, and then also we got a couple different segments that we kind of want to hit in this episode. We have Ask Gilbert, where I'm gonna ask him a couple questions in terms of the state of the Rams as we start, I guess, pads for the Rams. It's been a couple of days that they've been on, with pads on, and then also our last thing that we'll cover will be our recap of what we saw on Tuesday. So Gilbert, just let me get the Rams news and notes out of the way because that is going to lead into our engagement question. Or do you want to start off with the engagement question and then we can transition
Yeah,
into
yeah.
Rams news and notes?
Because it's definitely news related. And for the engagement question of the week, I got to get the voice ready for the season. We're still
Yes.
in preseason mode, but for the engagement question of the week here at House of Horns, it's not a good one. It's a little on the downer side, but what is your level of concern over the injuries in training camp? The big hit was Darion Kendrick, torn ACL, the cornerback there for the LA Rams. I want to say, yeah, year 3 for the cornerback Darion Kendrick. They weren't expecting him to be a starter, but definitely depth wise and helping out. He is a feisty cornerback. To lose him already when you have an older secondary group with Darius Williams and Tre'Davious White, you're probably going to need a little bit of Deion Kendrick, and that's not going to be the case anymore. But the one that's really a big question mark right now is Jonah Jackson. He might be out for the rest of training camp, the rest of the preseason. We'll see. We don't know just yet, but he was a big money acquisition in free agency, and I think Jonah Jackson is going to be a big piece of what the Rams want to do this year. So that's a hit there. But, I guess the good part is happening early in the season. It's not that very long of an injury. But let me know in the comments, what is your level of concern over the injuries in training camp? There's a few kind of nagging ones too. Kobe Turner hasn't really practiced yet, but he's been out there on the field doing a little bit of stuff. You got Alaric Jackson also hasn't been practicing. So, it's a good amount of guys. They're not participating right now.
Yeah, and so Rampants, get on the comments here. Let us know what is your level of concern over the injuries during training camp, and just to get into Ram news and notes right off the bat here, Gilbert. As you talked about, you got Jonah. We were there yesterday, and we saw Jonah Jackson leave with trainers, and we were like, "Well, what's up with that?" A couple of reporters asked afterwards, hey, and he said he didn't know. He didn't even see what happened. So, but as we know now, uh, uh one of your former colleagues, how do you say, Adam
Grossbart.
Grossbar? There you go. He said he tweeted out that he saw Jonah Jackson in a sling, which didn't sound good. Come to find out, according to some of the beat reporters, it sounds like it's a shoulder injury, and there is a chance that he might miss some time during the regular season. So nothing has been, official yet. So we'll wait, just because Sean McVay talked to us yesterday, and is not. He wasn't scheduled to talk today, so we don't know when we're gonna get an update on Jonah Jackson, Gilbert.
Yeah, and to kind of add more, I guess, more to the pile here. It's not a big deal, but when we were there, we saw Matthew Stafford get stepped on, and was it Joe Noteboom who
Yeah, it was
was
Joe
filling in
Noteboom.
for Jonah
Yes,
Jackson? So
yes,
that's not a good start already. So yeah, because it'd
yeah.
be Kevin Dotson, Jonah Jackson, and Steve Avila in the interior. So you need guys like Joe Noteboom, but don't step on the quarterback. And I think he's okay, Matthew Stafford. But it sucks. The bright side is it doesn't sound like it's gonna be like a whole month. It could linger into the regular season, but this is the time of year you want to get Jonah Jackson acclimated with the new team with the LA Rams. Get a feel for what McVay and LaFleur are doing schematically. Get to learn how to play. With your teammates like I mentioned, Avila, Kevin Dotson, Rob Havenstein, Allery Jackson, who also banged up, and Havenstein's a veteran guy who's going to get a lot of days off. So you want to build that chemistry. He's not going to get that. And he's such a good guard for the Detroit Lions, too. So I would really want to see how they utilize that rushing attack. And when we were there, Victor, they were really doing a lot of running plays because they want to utilize Kevin Dotson and Jonah Jackson and just kind of run up, those sides there and make it work with this new scheme that they have here. But, the bright side, it could have been worse. It's just for now, it's going to be one of those things where like you're going to play catch up a lot, and he might not be in top form in September. Might take him until October, and that could lead to a slow start.
Yeah, and then the other thing you kind of you kind of have to start thinking about as well with the with injuries is you try to come back too early and then it lingers, as you said, into the regular season and it just keeps getting worse and worse. So you just hope for the best. You let him get fully healthy, and whenever he's ready to go, he we'll know. And I can't wait for the update. Just a couple more things, Gilbert, here with news and notes. Another guy that we saw in street clothes there on Tuesday was Alaric Jackson. He has an ankle injury, but it sounds like he's day to day. You talked about with the injury, not an injury, but Joe no Boom stepped on Matthew Stafford late in that practice, and he was the one that was in for Alaric Jackson at left tackle. But
Oh,
we'll kind of talk about more about Joe No Boom if Alaric Jackson is okay from this ankle injury, which I don't see him playing in the preseason at this point. It'll, you're gonna be at the practice between the Chargers and the Rams on Sunday. So,
yeah.
do you think we see him there, or should they just kind of take it easy with him just because you don't
Well,
want to push?
now that the starting lineup's all out of whack, like maybe you do want to take it easy because at first you want to build the chemistry and be on the same page, but and it's out of sync right now. So I actually going into that scrimmage against the Chargers on Sunday, I want to see what formation they use because who's going to be the backup guard there for that scenario? Is it Logan Bruss? I think I saw him. He looked pretty massive, like he's in shape. But see, that's where I got to learn the second team. That's why you go to training camp because you get to learn about second team, third team
Yep.
in case of emergency. So I want to see what unit they roll out there. Like you mentioned, I in my head I thought Nopen's going to be a backup guard. Oh wait, no, he's playing left tackle because Jackson's not ready. That's a good thing for Noteboom. He could be inside, outside, it's flexibility that pays off. But maybe this is a time of year where you want some young guys to get some repetitions because injuries do happen. It happened a lot in 22. I remember that, and it happened
Yep.
a little bit last year when Kyron Williams was out. So, I'm trying to think about the bright side here, but we are going to get familiar with the second stringers for the offensive line.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing would be like the perfect scenario is right now with Jonah Jackson out, you just plug in Joe No Boom. But we'll see what happens. There's still a couple, we still have about a month or so before the start of the regular season. So before that game on Sunday night again versus the Lions. So then the two more items here just to go over. Matthew Stafford adjusted contract terms are now official. Gilbert, Rams quarterback, gets an additional $5 million this year and $4 million guaranteed roster bonus for next year. Still, no guarantee money for 2025, no guarantee money for 2026. And we'll get into this, Gilbert. This is part of my Ask Gilbert segment. So, just hold off. I don't want you to give anything away yet. And then the last thing we have here for news and notes, we saw him out there, but the Rams signed Jerry Jacobs after losing Darion Kendrick for the season and Darius Williams to a hamstring injury. So they've brought in someone. He was wearing number 4, and he kind of stood out, to be honest with
Yeah.
you. He had a couple breakups out there yesterday when we saw him. So a good signing, a veteran guy, a guy who was with the Lions last season. So just I really do like it. Was an underrated signing, but they have another guy in there now to kind of help out with this older secondary as you talked about.
Yeah, he made a couple of plays and we were checking the roster. Who's this guy? It was a new guy, but Now that I think about it, Victor, like I wonder, if they might consider using Steve Avila back at guard and who's the backup center because again, injuries are,
Yeah, and
are
he's a
piling up.
developmental guy. Yeah, I already checked. Trust me, I checked on this, and then the backup center is a developmental guy. So they really did not want to use him this season.
Mm,
So I mean, it's gonna be, now do you go out and sign another guy just for the meantime, which it sounds like they might have to do. I mean, and then go from there. But we'll get into it. I kind of want to go over some of these injuries with
yeah.
you for As Gilbert. So let's get to As Gilbert here, Gilbert, talking about it. But how concerned should fans be about the injuries that the Rams have sustained during training camp for the outlook of the season? Because I mean, you don't want to start thinking about 2022 and all the injuries that we saw and how it opened the floodgates for a terrible season. But I mean, is there optimism for you that hey, they're not bad injuries? Where are you at with the outlook and the injuries?
With the offensive line, like you wanted it to be a strength, but I'm not too concerned just yet, because of those versatile players we're talking about, Steve Avila, Joe Noteboom, and say the Jackson injury is not too bad, then okay, cool. You put Noteboom where Jonah Jackson's going to be, or say Jackson is a little more banged up, you put Noteboom on left tackle, you move Steve Avila around, you have options. So it's not the best thing to be doing, but there are options. The one thing I am very concerned about is the secondary, and I like Cam Curl, the safety. I like the growth of Quinton Lake, and Quinton Lake. He's always up and down. And he was, when we talked to him at the Super Bowl, he's honest about this. Like sometimes he gets burned, and sometimes he has big plays. And once he finds that steadiness and being consistent, and he continues to grow. Same thing with Russ Cheese. It should be okay there. In the secondary, but the cornerbacks is always kind of like, yeah, they look better on paper, but they're older. Can they stay healthy? And then you see Darius Williams get burned on a deep play. I think maybe Demarcus Robinson, and he pulled a hammy. And then you see Darion Kendrick, torn ACL, who's a younger guy, supposed to give you depth. Now you really need Kobe Durant to step up. We thought he would make that jump in year 2. He did not. Maybe he does it in year 3. Who knows? And then can you really, hold your breath on Tre'Davious White staying healthy? For the most part, he's been out there. He's been feisty, competitive, but he's still older and it's dealt with injuries. So, and the secondary was definitely an issue last year. That's why they went out and got some veteran guys, but some older guys with injury concerns, and that's starting to catch up already. But Cam Crow's a playmaker. Maybe they work around it with Tre'Davious White and Kobe Durant. Maybe Darius Williams comes back quicker than we all think, but when they're starting when it's starting to pile up, it's something that it gets pretty bad, and I don't think they have that same flexibility in the secondary that they do on the offensive line, and that's a good thing for the offense. But the defense, man, when you don't have Aaron Donald, then you better have moments of defending longer than usual. That could be an issue.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I mean, especially with that defense. I mean, I was impressed with what I saw, especially against a really good offense, that you have out there. Seeing that secondary fly around. I mean, Quinn Lake, we'll get into later on for a recap. I thought he was impressive. You had Camp Curl. I mean, he really stands out. I mean, the way he can move around and he just flies to the ball. That's really impressive. But we're talking about there's not a lot of guys behind them, and I think that's where we're kind of a little concerned about that. Is you want to see them. I think part of the smoke and mirrors, as we talked about last season, and how big of a surprise it was for them to make that leap to be a playoff team after a lot of people didn't think they could be that. Is because you finished so well, is that your draft capital is not as high. It's hard to bring in players. Yeah, you ended up with Jared Verse and Brendan Fisk, but that's part of it. You're trying to fill the roster around younger guys, develop them, but developing players takes time, and that's part of having depth, and it takes time. And that's my only concern in terms of that. But I think as long as they can stay healthy for the rest of this uh, training camp and preseason, I think I'll still be I'll still be confident in this team that they can make a playoff push.
Yeah, it kind of just speeds up the development of a Jared Verse, a Braden Fisk. You want hopefully Kobe Turner comes back, and then maybe it's not. Maybe I'm hoping for Kobe Turner because we're all expecting a big year. It's more like caution instead of like, yeah, it could be an injury that could be lingering for the guy, and we'll see. But maybe it's not, and he has a dominant season, and then Fisk and Burris are off to a fast start. Maybe Michael Hoyt's being used a little more differently, where he's inside outside, being versatile and helping out. Maybe Byron Young takes that second steps, two more steps forward for second year progression there for him. So if you're able to create, you know, somewhat the same push that you usually get from Aaron Donald, that creates a lot of good things for the secondary. You still have Ernest Jones making plays, so it requires more people to do more when you're trying to have a collective defensive unit this year with the additions there. But early on, they might not have that.
Yeah. And just before we move on with this topic here, Gilbert, is Steve On says maybe Lemur as a replacement guard. I know he played some center in college, but I don't want Avila having to go back and forth at center and guard. And he was one of the draft picks here. He was a guy that got, the Rams got praised for drafting this offseason, but it's a lot to put on a rookie. I get it. Steve Avila came in, but you're having if I'm Stafford, I want to keep Steve Avila under center just because you know you've been you've been getting the ball from him all off season. You don't want to make that change now during training camp and the preseason, Gilbert. So I know how that's very important for that transfer between center and quarterback.
Yeah, that's why you're hoping the Jackson injury is not that serious. We're like, hey, he's just kind of day to day, come back in a week, and maybe he's back for the scrimmage, and you don't really get affected too much because then you put in Joe Noteboom there, and then you're pretty much set. But if you have two injuries in the starting line with Jackson and Jonah Jackson, actually two Jacksons, right?
Yes.
Action Jacksons there, but it starts. We're like, okay, like Delbert just mentioned Logan Bruss there,
Oh,
and
there we go.
when I saw Logan Bruss, I was like, did he like get in shape in the gym? He looked much like bigger, like with bulkier and muscle. So hey, maybe it's time to step up, like Delbert say. Delbert said in the comments, Logan Bruss time to step up. Been in the system for a while. Yeah, he got drafted the year that I covered him in 2022, so that's year three. He got cut, but got brought back. So maybe a guy like that could step up. But yeah, you don't want two injuries on the offensive line that linger for a long time. That definitely hurts your depth. But if it's only one, you have flexibility with Joe Noteboom. But I do know that Joe Noteboom has had his ups and downs as well.
Yeah, and then we have Willie Bowen who says the LA Rams look solid this NFL season, horns up. So he's not concerned about the injuries, which is good to see because, like I said, we have to talk about this stuff because it can be a concern. Now, Gilbert, moving on to Matthew Stafford. As we said, we were there yesterday. We saw Matthew Stafford. He looks great. I mean, you see the gray hairs are coming in. He's now 36 years old. But my question to you is, now that we have the terms of the adjustment made to his contract, what does it mean for this season and then going forward?
Yeah, I've been trying to look at both sides. Like, to answer the question, it means it's pretty much a 1 year contract. And when they were using words like adjustments and he gets $4 million here and maybe five here, and it kind of sounded like, all right, the Rams don't want to lose the flexibility of getting out the contract next year. So they'll make him happy by giving him more guaranteed money this year. Cool. You have flexibility to give him the money now. And here you go, Stafford. Can you please come in? Can we not make it awkward? It's going to be awkward, but just show up. And he did. And then Tom Pelissero reported when we were out there at Loyola Marymount, that's essentially a 1 year, $40 million deal, which is such a bargain for these quarterbacks now, especially the caliber of Matthew Stafford. When guys are making $55 million per year, he's making $40 million for 2024. And it sounds like you could get out of the contract, the Rams, that is, after this season. You could maybe draft a quarterback. You could maybe go sign one. Dak Prescott, anybody? We'll find out he's available. You could trade for one. Who knows? So I'll say this. I feel like when you think about Tua, you think about Jordan Love, you think about Trevor Lawrence, like, and I get that Stafford is 36 years old and he's had some injuries, but in terms of career resume, Super Bowl champion, playoff victories, clutch performances, and going off of last year where he was, I think, a top five quarterback, he should be the one making the $55 million per year. Maybe not 5 years, maybe 2 years. I don't know. And the Rams didn't want to give that up. But here's where I get the Rams' point of view. A lot of teams, when there's a quarterback negotiations and there's contracts and you got to talk about it, they just cave. Like, all right, we got to compete with Patrick Mahomes. We got to compete for the Rams' sake. You got to compete with the 49ers who are loaded. Yeah, they got Brock Purdy who has question marks, but they're just a loaded team. You got to have a quarterback to compete. But it's always like you got to have Joe Burrow. You got to have Josh Allen. So they just panic and just pay the quarterback because finding one is a hard job. It's even harder to find a Patrick Mahomes, but it's gotten to a point where teams don't even try anymore. Like, cool, we got somebody like a Daniel Jones who made $40 million per year, on his contract 2 years ago. It's like he showed flashes, he showed potential. Let's keep riding this out because it's harder to go find one. It's harder to spend draft capital. It's harder to pay one on the open market. So people just cave, but they don't create options. They don't create flexibility. And I'm not gonna knock the Rams for creating flexibility. Say it does work out with Stafford next year, and hey, Stafford, you have nowhere else to go. Want to make it work again? Cool, let's pay you again. That's an option. Or hey, Stafford, actually, you look pretty old. I see Dak Prescott available. Go pay that guy. Or actually, Stafford, we just traded up for a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. See you later. We'll go draft one. Like, teams got to start get in the scenario of creating options. And like, sometimes you are cornered and against the wall. But look at the Lions. Everybody made fun of them for getting Jared Goff, but they
Yeah.
created an option. They put pressure on Jared Goff when nobody believed on him, and he won a playoff or two playoff games, and he got paid. Look at the Buccaneers. They saw that Baker Mayfield had something decent with the Rams. They paid him like what $4 million for 1 year. They won a playoff game. Now he's making $33 million per year, which is still cheaper than some of
Yeah.
these quarterbacks. Like, would you rather have Baker or Tua? It's actually debatable to me. I'm not gonna,
Yeah.
I will think about it. Maybe I'll go with Tua, but it's debatable. All I'm trying to say is, from the team point of view, it's not bad to create an option. And the way I'm talking here, it kind of gives me more of a point of view for the Falcons. We gave them a lot of crap all off season for getting Kirk
Yeah.
Cousins and getting Michael Penix Jr. Well, the created options are the most important position in the NFL. So I give them credit for that. I just don't get why you spend money in the same offseason and then go draft a quarterback. But look at the Packers. You had Aaron Rodgers, and everybody gave them crap because you had Aaron Rodgers and you drafted Jordan Love. Well, Jordan Love became that guy. So all I'm saying, it's okay to create options. And then at the same time with Stafford, I think he was deserving of big time money. But I don't think people should panic either way. Maybe they reassess at the end of the year and then make it work with Stafford, or maybe the Rams have options that are better than Stafford, and that's okay too. It's just a little awkward right now. They got it to work, and we'll see. It should be a fascinating story how it plays out. If Stafford struggles this year and the Rams aren't doing well, it's going to be a lot of drama. Or
Yeah.
if they win and he plays well, then just re-sign him for a couple of years. I think it's going to end in a good way for the Rams.
Yeah, and I think part of the thing too, Gilbert, is that people don't think about is that everybody looks at Tom Brady and the fact that he pushed past his 40s and he was really good, and that's not every quarterback. We've already seen Aaron Rodgers get it, his Achilles torn, on the first drive of last season, and hasn't played in 2 seasons. I mean, you don't want to you don't want to end up like the Jets where you're having to put all your faith in Matthew Stafford staying healthy. And look, what he did with Detroit had, not a lot of people have recognized. He took a lot of pounding, and his body, has taken, he has paid for it, and we've seen that over the last couple of years with the Rams, and it's unfortunately, but at the same time, like, the Rams aren't responsible for paying him. They should. One of the things is that you have to be, and it sucks because, yes, he brought them a Super Bowl, and he should be paid for that, which he was. At first, he took a
Yeah,
pay cut, Gilbert. Remember, because they wanted him to take a pay cut to be able to sign and make the team make the team better around him, which they did. But then, as soon as they won the Super Bowl, they made sure they paid him, and he got paid. Now it's about, look, it's not that we don't love you. And one of the things I learned with Sean McVay is he's going to do what's best for the team, and he's going to look for the next quarterback. Unfortunately, had they found that, I think part of what happened, Gilbert, is that there were so many hungry QB teams in this draft that a lot of teams got left out. Teams like the Rams, the Raiders, other teams got left out. They thought they could find their quarterback in this draft, their future quarterback. And unfortunately, there was just so many teams that needed quarterbacks and they weren't trained. Usually you see a lot of those top teams that are picking in the top 5, they're like, "You know what? We'll give up we'll give up a bunch of we'll give up our pick here to get a bunch of in return, a bunch of picks in return." But a lot of those teams were like, "No, we need our quarterback now," which I was kind of surprised by. But that's what happened, and it sucks. But that's where we find ourselves. I think we're on a year to year thing, as you talked about, Gilbert.
Honestly, Victor, you talking about the contract that he got after the Super Bowl, it could be part of the reason why Stafford just kind of said, F it, I'll come in. They took care of me after the Super Bowl. We didn't have to fight back then. I really appreciate that. I'll give you guys the benefit of the doubt. You're going to take care of me if I do ball out this season. And credit to the Rams. People are making, giving them crap for the contract because, oh, you paid him too soon, and look at him, he's all banged up and injured. And now the contract's a bargain because all these guys
Yep.
got paid. So it's kind of like what we're seeing with wide receiver right now, where teams are paying their receiver earlier because they don't want to pay the high tab because going up and up and up. Maybe Les Snead thought 2 years ahead and saw all these young quarterbacks in the 2020 draft are going to break the bank, and let's lock up
Yeah.
our guy before it gets too late. So one, he got a discount, and two, he rewarded his player for doing what you're supposed to do, win the Super Bowl. So I think that might be part of it, Victor. Where like he was a little annoyed about the contract adjustment, an adjustment they call it, right? And he
Right.
showed up because of that, because it's like, hey, you've done right by me. Fine, we'll deal with it at the end of the season. It's okay with having options. Like if he gets up the market and he balls out with or without the Rams, he's gonna break the bank too.
Oh
Because
yeah.
we saw Kirk Cousins break the bank this past year, like even with an injury, a torn
Yep.
Achilles. So I think Stafford thought about his options and said, you know what, it's not the worst thing if I'm playing on a contract here. And maybe the Rams said, I don't know how the contract is for older players because they're always tricky. Maybe there's a thing where like, hey, they can't even put the franchise tag on him so he could walk and make all that money. But that's a problem, I think, for Rams fans point of view. Maybe don't worry about it because there might be a good plan in place. Like you don't want to be stuck where like, ah, crap, there's nothing here. It just seems like they're setting up for something just in case it doesn't work out. And if it does work out with Stafford, then maybe you sign him for another 2-year contract and he does get to play in the back end of his career like a Tom Brady. But another point there when you brought up the Patriots, Victor, like even when the Patriots had Tom Brady, they kept drafting quarterbacks every other year
Yep.
just in case they develop a good backup, they develop a potential starter in case Brady tears the ACL, Matt Castle, anybody, or he gets suspended for 4 games, Jimmy G, anybody, or becomes a trade asset where you trade Jimmy G or Matt Castle for a second round pick. Like it's
Jacoby
okay to have,
Brissett.
yeah, a perfect example. It's okay to have options at quarterback, and I just think for both sides, it seems like it was the right move.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I just think that a lot of people get in. They think it's a personal thing, and fans get involved here, and they think, well, why doesn't he want to just take a pay cut? It's not about that, man. The guy needs to get his money as well. He already took a pay cut, so I don't think it's personal on both sides, and they worked it out for this season. So I just want to share some of the comments that we've gotten on here on this topic. It says Stafford dilemma is his age works against in the future plans. No doubt he's better than the top paid quarterbacks. He's gonna have to put up and win another Super Bowl. That's from Delbert Salgado.
Nothing wrong with pressure. Putting pressure in a quarterback, and I've been screaming about it. Like I get that Trevor Lawrence won a playoff game, and Love won one playoff game, two hasn't won a playoff game. But like, can you do something more? Can you be at least do what Joe Burrow did or Jalen Hurts and get to the Super Bowl? And it's like again, like I think teams are just too scared not to have an above average quarterback. So hey, if Stafford did it once, hey, maybe he's okay with being uncomfortable and having to win a second one. He wants to be a great player. So when you get two Super Bowl rings, you become a legendary player.
Yeah, and then just as Delbert said, have to go out and win another Super Bowl. And then I'll get to Michael's comment here, but let me get to Steve's because Steve Ons says Gilbert, they didn't realize things were that contagious between Branson and Stafford. I think Cooper Cup's contract is almost up, and we got to pay Puka and possibly Ernest Jones as well.
Yeah. Maybe the Rams are just kind of getting ready for a new era of Rams football. They already said goodbye to Aaron Donald. He retired, and I remember last year when nobody was giving this team a chance because the only players they knew was Stafford, Donald, and Cup, and now they got old quick because the good thing they got a lot of young players, and like you got to pay Puka. Maybe it's good to think about it early because he's gonna break the bank too as well.
Yeah.
Maybe you got to pay Kyron Williams, who was. But keep in mind, Puka and Kyron. I know it's still a ways away, but when you're not a first round pick, you got to pay these guys quicker. The ones that become
Yep.
stars in the day two, day three picks. So what was it? Two fifth round picks. Actually, Kyron Williams is year three, Victor, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken.
Yeah. So he's
So
got one more year before free agency, which
actually,
the Blake Corum thing kind of makes sense
yeah,
too,
like
Gilbert.
you
Yes.
could technically pay him after this year if you want to. So the guys who are not first round picks or their contract situations come up earlier, Puka and Kyra and these guys, and that's kind of the issue when you draft so well, right?
Yep. And I mean, that's part of kind of looking ahead, man. I mean, you have to plan for these things, and the Rams have done a good job of planning ahead. Like I said, if things work out with Stafford this season, I would assume that he's gonna command more money, and they'll take care of him. And if McVay feels good about Stafford for another season or two, it all depend. I think honestly, it just comes down to McVay and how he feels because
That's it.
we saw what happened with Jared Goff. And then before we move on here to the next question, Gilbert, we have our guy Michael Armenta. He just wants to say what's happening, compas.
What's up,
Hey, what's
Michael?
going on, Michael? It's always good to see you on here. Uh, we are doing the Ask Gilbert segment right now. So usually, what I want to do going forward is have questions from you guys, and then we'll ask Gilbert about them. But because we're just introducing this is I'm doing this time. But to end on a positive note here with my third question here, Gilbert, what is a one player that has kind of stood out from your two visits at Rams camp so far in the last 2 weeks?
Hmm. You know what? Just because, and maybe it's not the best answer because it's an easy one, but I was very critical of Cooper Cup last year. I know who was it? Was it Delbert that brought up Cooper Cup? No, it was Steve that brought up Cooper Cup. And I didn't really touch on it on his question, but he looked old. He also had a lot of injuries, and it's like, okay, now it's the Puka show, and maybe it's still gonna be the Puka show, but just seeing Cooper Cup operate in training camp. By the way, shout out to you, Victor. You have that cool video
Hmm.
of them kind of throwing some fades to each other in the end zone, and uh was it? Yeah, it was Quentin Lake defending Cooper Cup, and Stafford threw a dime. That kind of chemistry matters. They still have it, and it was just
Yep.
he just threw it up there, and he knew exactly where Cup is going to be, and he's been making plays all camp. Maybe he's healthier, maybe he's fresher, and that could maybe help out. And like I really like the trio of receivers they have. Like again, don't overlook Demarcus Robinson, Puka Nacua. Make sure to give him his flowers when I talk to him for my story at SI. So I think the Cup thing is, a dilemma with the contract is that he's maybe not the same elite wide receiver that he was in 21. And that's going to be an issue with the contract too. Like, hey, do you get out of it? Do you not? We'll see. But I think he also knows it's going to be a big pressure year for him. And so far, I think he's going to he's shown that he's going to be ready for it.
Yeah, and I mean, from what I saw on Tuesday, he looked like the old Cooper Cup. I mean, he didn't look like he had slowed down. He still has the quick feet. The route running is really good. And then just seeing him put the work in as well, like not just with the route running and as I talk about, but stretching and going through everything. Like that guy is still like, one of the hardest working guys out there. And I think the most impressive thing, Gilbert, might be the relationship that he has with Cooper Cup. It's easy for a franchise receiver like Cooper Cup, who's won the Triple Crown in 2021, to just be like, look, I don't want to pass this on. I don't want you to take my job. You know, I want to be I want to be the main guy. I want to get all the targets, and for him to kind of take him under his wing this offseason, I think that's been the most impressive thing to me, Gilbert. I mean, because we see and we hear about wide receivers being so selfish, and it's going on under the radar. Like I haven't seen a lot of people talking about this, and to me that's a big thing.
Yeah, no, I think it does matter when when you could tell if somebody's going to be a star, but maybe you're not ready to ride off into the sunset just yet, and you take them under your wing. What do you call them? A tick, or I guess
Yeah,
a bug they can't get rid of, and that's a credit to Puka Nacua because he wants to get better from somebody like Cooper Cup, and also it's a credit to Cooper Cup because if Puka could feel comfortable to reach out to the guy and say, "Hey, can I be a part of your offseason program?" That probably says that Cooper Cup was willing to share a lot of pointers and guidance during the rookie year. So he took it. He probably took the offer. I'm guessing after the rookie year, he's like, "Hey, Puka, you want to work with me? Let me know." And Puka, said, "Yeah, I'll definitely take that offer." And to hear how rigorous and demanding Cooper Cup is in the offseason, I'm sure he shared all the secrets that he has there. And a lot of the players don't do that. We see it with quarterbacks. The Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers, Joe Flacco, Lamar Jackson. Some of these veteran
yeah,
guys just say, "Hey, I'm not going to teach you." Who knows what's happening with Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix Jr. But nobody wants to lose their job, and
yeah.
but I think Cooper Cup knows that there's different roles to this 11 personnel with Sean McVay, and if he has to do the dirty work, hey, he doesn't mind. He's probably gonna get a couple of plays every now and then too.
Yeah, and I mean, we'll get into it in terms of Demarcus Robinson, but he's another guy that I was kind of impressed by. But let me go through these comments before we kind of get into our what we saw yesterday at a Rams camp. But kind of off of that, Steve On says he went to practice on Monday and Fisk
Hmm.
looked really good during the first day of padded practice. He is someone that I've heard a lot. He's been impressive during camp, Gilbert.
Yeah, and especially I think it says something that Braden Fisk was able to make an impact without Kobe Turner, and he's taking advantage of those extra snaps there with the first team defense because there's no Turner around to start the training camp. So that's good. You want to see that. When I went the first day, Jared Verse stood out to me just in terms of athleticism, size, and you look like a legit edge rusher. So those two guys, and also been reading stories about them already showing their chemistry from Florida State together. That's gonna go a long way as well. That's why they probably draft. That's why they gave up that second round pick in the future, right? They go up and get Fisk in the
Yeah.
draft. So that matters too. And again, I want to see is this foursome here, develop together. Kobe Turner, Byron Young, Fisk, and Jerry Verse, and let's see what they do for the next 2 or 3 years. Maybe they have a strong start this year. But yeah, it takes a while for interior alignment. But when you have Turner do it so easy last year, maybe it doesn't take that long.
Yeah, and I mean, especially when they have that chemistry between him and Jared Burst, maybe that helps a lot having another guy who you played with, in college. It should help with the transition. Michael Armenta says Cup will ball out this year, finally 100%. And then I forgot about this comment here. Delbert Salgado says Stafford chasing a gold jacket now, and I think that's what he's playing. That's why he wants to stay. I think for him, it's important to. I think it'd be important for him to stay with McVay because it solidifies his gold jacket chances.
Yeah, right now it's a conversation where he most likely will get in. You win a second Super Bowl, there's no conversation. You'll get in for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And then Delbert, we'll get to that question about linebackers now. Let's get into now our Rams training camp visit, Gilbert, and let's start off with the quarterbacks because those were the first ones we spotted right off the bat when we got in on the field. But before I even start with the quarterbacks, just I know you talked about this. I asked you about it, but I'll say this: I do like LMU's setup more than I do UC Irvine. I'll say this: like, you didn't do it any justice with what you said last week, so I'll just confirm what you kind of talked about. It is true. I mean, the campus being right next to the beach is awesome, and then you walk up, you see hand gathers as you talked about. Also, the media room is inside of it's like a meeting room. It's air conditioning, leather seats, so all that it's really cool. But in terms of it has like this. I like the small setup because it allows the fans to kind of be you surround the field, and it's just an intimate kind of training camp from the other ones that I've seen around the league, the ones that I've actually been able to go to. So, big ups to the Rams for doing this because I to me I think it's a better setup, but I just wanted to confirm what you said. But I thought that was really that I really do like the setup much better.
Yeah, it might be the smallest one, the smallest training camp site that I've been to, but it's a good view from anywhere where you sit. Unfortunately, you don't get as many fans in there as you did at Irvine, but shout out to LMU people. It was well run. It seemed like everybody was getting in and out very quickly in terms of parking. Also, the weather is awesome. You know, when you
Yes.
get out there, you think maybe 5 p.m. anywhere else would be hot, but it's breezy and low sun there is awesome. But you're really right there. You can see you could hear when people are screaming Puka Nacua. He turns around, says hello. You can hear somebody say, "Hey Stafford, give me an autograph." I think it was Jimmy G was getting asked for an autograph. So yeah, it's a good venue. I like it. You know, if I had to create like my favorite venues, it might be up there. I don't think anything's gonna beat Seattle because the Seahawks are right next to the lake and it's just beautiful
Oh yeah.
weather and big trees and all that. But in terms of the intimate setting kind of vibe, and sometimes you just kind of say that to say things are they're small but they're not great. But no, it's actually pretty nice. I think for them
Yeah.
it works. It works pretty
Yeah.
nice, and we'll see what they do with it.
Yeah. The only thing, as you talked about too, I guess the only negative is they had to bring in the field goal post, and it was the skinny ones, just because
Yeah.
that's all they can bring in there. So that's the only, I guess, fallback to this. But in terms of having that one field, I thought it was pretty intimate, and I really enjoyed my time there yesterday. But just to kind of get into it, before we start here, it says Flaco says checking in puro ramstero. So what's going on, Flaco? Good to
So
have you on
Flacco,
here. Um, all right, Gilbert. So let's start with the quarterbacks. What did you see? What was your takeaway from the quarterbacks?
I'll be quick on Stafford. He was on fire, especially the first day that I went. I think yesterday was a little more of a sluggish day. Second day of pads, more of a focus on the running game day. So it wasn't a lot from the quarterbacks, but it was nice to see Stetson Bennett out there. He had a rough rookie year where he just disappeared and nobody knew what the hell happened with him. But he didn't get too many reps because Jimmy G and Stafford were taking the bulk of it. But to see him out there a couple times, I think the first day that I went, he made a nice play on the sideline up the sideline for a long play to Ronnie Rivers. You saw him out of the backfield and hit him in stride, and that was a good play. So it's gonna take some work for Stetson Bennett, but see him out there practicing was nice to see.
Yeah, I mean, and just to see, they had one of the things I saw was that Dave Ragoni, the quarterbacks coach. I was trying to figure out. I was like, he looks familiar. I'm like, I've seen this guy before, and of course, he played in the league. So I was like, okay, it was funny to see that, kind of doing some research, that him and Zach Robinson kind of switched roles, because he was the quarterbacks coach, and now at Atlanta, and now he's the offensive coordinator there, and now he's Dave Ragoni is the quarterbacks coach. So I thought that was kind of cool. They were having like a little huddle meeting there before when we first got there. So, but just kind of moving on in terms of the running backs and receivers, Gilbert. I'll start off with the running backs. Seeing Kyron Williams and Blake Corum, they're like the Spider-Man meme. They look just alike,
Yeah,
Gilbert. We
yeah.
we kept looking at them, and I was like, okay, they're one of them's 23, the other one's 22, and I was like, okay, who's in right now, because they have the same stature. They run almost identically the same. I mean, and it just tells you they're ready. If Kyron Williams for some reason gets hurt, he's ready to go. But I just thought, like, looking at it, I couldn't tell them apart, if I'm being completely honest. The only thing was that one of them is 23 and the other one's 22. But yeah,
Yeah, and just to add to that, because yesterday it was a run heavy day. I saw a whole lot of Kyron Williams. He was making plays, and then it got to a point where, like, is that Kyron or Blake Corum? And I think
yeah,
because the jerseys kind of get they go up a little high, so you can't tell which number. It's 22, 23. A couple of times it was Blake Corum, number 22. So, yeah, it's gonna be a fun 1-2 punch there, and that's why you want to see Jonah Jackson healthy, because you want to see these maulers create these massive running lanes for Kyron Williams and Blake Corum. But we'll see. And I was a big fan of the pick because of Kyron Williams' injury history. You want to protect yourself, and we'll see what they do together.
yeah. And then kind of just moving on to the receivers. Anything that stood out to you from the receivers
Yeah, like I
besides
mentioned
like the
earlier. Yeah, the trio is gonna be very good there. I mean, to kind of go off from that, Tutu Atwell made a couple plays.
yeah.
I don't know. I think he might get lost on the shuffle, but he's gonna be a guy that if injuries occur, you could count on to help out there. I remember a couple of years ago when like, oh, you have like maybe 7 guys that could do well. Remember Lance McCutcheon or no, you had Ben Skoranek, and now you don't have as much depth, but you have a pretty good trio in the Marcus Robinson and Puka Nacua. And with Robinson, I think last year he was a surprise player, and like, oh, okay, let's see what he does as number 3. And now I think nobody is going to be surprised that if he does something big, he's going to have opportunities to start. As he's for sure a starter, number 3 there, and we'll see what he does. But I think they might need a little more depth there. But at least they have Tutu as the number 4.
I'll say this: just keep an eye on number 88, Whittingham, the kid
Yeah,
out of Texas. He was making some plays, long hair. You can't miss him out there. If you see him during the preseason, just keep an eye on
yeah.
number
They might
88
use
because
him a lot
he
for returning duties. We'll
special,
see.
yeah, special teams. He's gonna be a big special teams guy. Uh, but yeah, and then let's finish up the offense with the offensive linemen and tight ends. And I think Stevan might have seen my rundown here, Gilbert, because look at this comment here by Stevan. Says, sorry if I take your question, Victor, but the tight ends are really looking good. Davis Allen has bulked up big time since last year. Cody Parkinson is a giant, and Harner Long is looking good as well. And I'll say this: those that was in my notes here, Gilbert. Davis Allen is gonna he's primed for a breakout year. I told you, you said I need a guy. If I'm gonna call him a breakout, he needs to be 2 years or 3 years in the league. This is your guy here for the Rams, Gilbert, because Davis Allen was making plays out there yesterday. Kobe Parkinson looks like a dude. Like he is the guy is massive. Like he's gonna be a good blocker. And then to your point, Steve, Hunter Long was making plays as well, and we kept looking at the number, and we're like, oh yeah, as long as we was like we haven't seen him because he can't stay healthy, but yeah, he looked good out there, Hunter Long as well. So good eye by you, Steve.
Yeah, you would rather have Tyler Higbee healthy, but I think they're in a good
Yeah,
spot because, yeah, maybe Davis Allen is not a polished blocker, but he's a very good pass catcher, and I'm surprised people didn't talk about him as much towards the end of the year. When they were saying what a great rookie class, Kobe Turner, Puka Nacua, Steve Avila. I'm like, bring in Davis Allen's his name when you're talking about the rookie class. I thought Davis Allen was impressive in his very. I know it was very limited. I want to say maybe it was a Ravens game where he really stepped up as a pass catcher there. He knows how
in
to
the
run
playoff
routes.
game too, Gilbert.
Yeah.
Like once Tyler Higbee went down,
Yep.
he made some nice catches, especially down by the red zone.
Yeah, reliable hands and a very shifty guy. And also we've seen the stories about the Rams wanting to go up and get Brock Bowers. That kind of tells me that maybe Tyler Higbee is on the back end of his career, and I think they're already thinking about life without him. But if Davis Allen could continue developing it as a playmaker and Cody Parkinson could help out in the blocking game, they should be okay without Higbee. But obviously, you want Higbee because he does a little bit of everything. And if Hunter Long stays healthy, then the more the better.
Yeah, I know we talked about a lot about the offensive line, Gilbert. Just to kind of give a quick little, just some thoughts here on the offensive line. Kevin Dotson looks like they were running behind him, and he was just mauling dudes over when we saw practice yesterday. Kevin Dotson is worth the money that they paid him, and I think a lot of the running plays that you're gonna see, especially if Jonah Jackson has to miss some time, they're gonna run behind him and Havenstein. I mean that is it. That is a massive unit, especially on that side of the ball where you have Steve Avila, you can have Kevin Dotson and Rob Havenstein. Yeah, run the ball to the right, and then you'll see how much success you're going to have if you're the Rams.
For Steve Avila, nobody's really talking about him, and that's a good thing for a center. That means you're doing your
Yes.
job. You're not screwing it
Yep.
up. So, and one thing about Steve Avila in terms of as a person or his personality, he's a very outgoing person. The first day that I was at Rams camp, he just showed up into the media center and started talking to everybody. So, if you're that very outgoing, that means you communicate well. You're going to communicate with your quarterback. You're going to say, "Hey, how do you want the ball here? When do you want to snap?" Things like that. So it sounds like so far so good. And to one of the comments earlier, yeah, you don't want him going back and forth from guard to center. So maybe it's a good thing just keep him a center at all times.
Yep, that's a good point by you there, Gilbert. All right, let's move on. Let's move over to the defense. let's begin with the secondary. I know we had a lot to say there, but I'll just say this, Gilbert. Quentin Lake, friend of the show who joined us during Super Bowl Radio Week. I mean, I've seen him doing some interviews, but Sean McVay talked about him post, yesterday after practice, and he was saying that he loves his versatility, and on that video that I posted of Cooper Cup, with that nice timing touchdown with Stafford throwing him the ball, Quinn Lake was on that. He was guarding him there, and then he shrugged it off, and then during later on during full when they went 12 on 11 on 11, and you had you were running actual plays, he stood out. Like, he was breaking up passes, and I mean, just to see Sean McVay talk about him and rave about him, I thought that's a big deal. And I was kind of concerned in terms of him moving up to a new position and the way he was going to be used by the new defensive coordinator. I thought he might be, someone that might be relegated to the bench, but that doesn't sound like it. It looks like he's going to be a starter, and he's one of those guys that they're really gonna need to rely on because he's making a lot of good plays out there.
Yeah, he's versatile. He has size and length. He knows how to find the ball. I think he's a playmaker. The biggest thing for him is consistency, just being steady. There's a couple of times where like he's like getting beat in a play here or lingering on that play here and there. So if he's able to kind of just have more good than bad. And in the NFL, you're gonna have some bad players you're gonna want back. But he was able to limit that where it's a lot more good and some bad every now and then he's gonna be a good player. But to see him continue to develop, it's noticeable out there. And you saw yesterday, I saw for the 2 days I went, and he's definitely gonna be somebody who's gonna be involved in the secondary.
Was there anybody else for you that kind of stood out during the secondary?
Well,
That
it's a bunch of injuries right now, but the first day I was there, I really liked the competition that Darius Williams and Tre'Davious White provided against Puka Nacua. You could tell they wanted to challenge, and then Puka told me after those guys made sure to watch my tape. They're looking for my weaknesses. They're trying to push me, and that makes them better or makes both of them better. So, yeah, if Darius Williams comes back healthy quickly, if Tre'Davious White could still come back or just keep doing what he's doing and stay healthy and available, they're going to be fine. But just seeing the competition and the experience on the field, that's going to go a long way.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Tre'Davious White was. I mean, we didn't even mention that Deshaun Jackson was out there, and so was LaShawn McCoy, and we were talking about how they were teammates, Tre'Davious White and LaShawn McCoy, and so he was out there talking, and he made a couple of good breakups on the ball, and he looks like he has that makeup speed, because I was kind of concerned. I was like, are we going to be able to see him make up that speed? And he did. He went back and then was able to catch up to a ball and deflect it. So that's a good sign, having Tre'Davious White out there already, especially coming of two injury riddled seasons with the Bills.
Yeah, and just to add one more, Cam Curl kind of also reminds me, same body type as Quentin Lake. He has size, not as bulky, a little more on the skinnier side, but he knows how to find the ball. He's a playmaker. I know he was in that terrible secondary for the Commanders last year, but he might do some things with Chris Shula.
All right, let's finish up here, Gilbert, with our camp visit recap, and let's finish up with the front seven here and some special teams. And let me get to Delber's comment here, and he was at or his question. It says, "How do the linebackers look?" And a still unknown question in this defense. And honestly, the only linebacker you need to worry about or not worry about is Ernest Jones. I mean, Ernest Jones. Now that there is no Aaron Donald on this team, you could tell he's the leader of this defense, Gilbert. He is not only doing it vocally, but he's also doing it with this play. I saw him just the as we talked about Tre'Davious White, we talked about some of those guys in the secondary. They were all over there stretching with him. He is the leader of this team. I don't know what the Rams are waiting to extend him. I know they don't like to pay for this position, but you don't want to lose a guy like this who is a big leader. I want to see how he fits in now that you don't have an Aaron Donald, but in terms of leadership, That's the guy. He's the guy on defense now that Aaron Donald is gone.
Yeah, no, I think you don't have to worry about Ernest Jones, like you mentioned, Victor. The only problem is depth on that roster. Like you still see a lot of Roseboom out there, so we'll see. Maybe they have another guy that step up to help out Ernest Jones. It's just you have one really good linebacker who I thought should have made the Pro Bowl last year, and then
Yep.
a lot of question marks behind them. So if he stays healthy, they should be fine. But you would like to see the Rams utilize that position a little more. But hey, they have some depth on the defensive front. You could create different packages where you kind of integrate the linebackers with the defensive ends, and maybe you think about it that way a little more instead of linebackers, defensive linemen.
What about in terms of the defensive line? I have one, and I'll make it quick, Gilbert, and that is Michael Hoyt. Michael Hoyt looks like he's revamped his body. He looks like a defensive end. I didn't want to just say he looks a lot like his body type looks like a lot like the other white rushers out there, like Max Crosby, and T.J. Watt, but he looks cut like a guy. So I just want to see if he can actually do something with it now that he is pushing with Jared Verse out there. So it'll be interesting to see if the rookie can surpass him, or if Michael Hoyt, with the way he looks now, and is he's able to continue to make plays now that he's kind of reshaped his body into a defensive end
Yeah,
body.
Michael Hoyt is making Jared Verse earn his opportunities or earn a starting job. That's why I haven't seen so much of Jared Verse. But when he's out there, he's making his plays. But Michael Hoyt is not gonna just roll over and say, "Here, hey, take my 20 snaps per game. You can have him." He's not gonna do that. So maybe that's why he's in tip top shape. We all know that he went from defensive tackle to edge rusher, and maybe it's taking him a couple years to have his body round out to that. But also, it could create packages where he's playing inside and they're playing outside, and you have more edge rushers this year than you did last year. So, and we'll see. Maybe that's the way to think about it. Where Ernest Jones could be also an edge rusher, but maybe obviously help you out as a sideline playmaker. But yeah, maybe they could have used another maybe one more edge rusher because you would like to have four deep on a rotation to help you
Yeah.
out. But they're building something and they're trending, and when you have a Braden Fist too in there, I think this front could be pretty good.
Yeah. And that was the one guy that kind of stood out to me just in terms of the defensive line. But do you have any other players that kind of stood out for you from the defensive line? If not, we have a little bonus ask Gilbert here from Steve.
Uh, I think Byron Young, I know he's not as big as Jared Burrs, but he looks comfortable out there. He looks like, he knows what he's doing. So I'm not worried about Byron Young. And obviously, he didn't have as big of a rookie year as Kobe Turner did, but I think people are overlooking what Byron Young could do in year two. And he's been impressive for his first, well, I guess for the first two camp practices that I went to.
Yeah, and he looks a little bit bigger. I mean, he's starting to fill in. I mean, we as most players who go from their rookie season to their sophomore year, you could tell they make changes to their bodies, and that's good to see. And it'll be interesting to see how good he what the next step is for him next season. All right, Gilbert, we have Steve to finish out the show here. He says, trying to figure out the wide receiver, Matt. Cup, Puka, Robinson, Tutu are locks. Thinking Whittington will get in as a special teams. I think Tyler is in, but what about Xavier? And he's talking about Xavier Smith. Is
Let's see. One, two, three, four, five. Six or seven. I think seven is way too much,
Yeah,
Steve. But five to
I
six
think
might sound right.
is it fair to say that Tyler might be on the bubble here with Tyler Johnson, I think is his name, if I'm not.
Yeah, I think the first five here listed are going to be locks here, and the last two are definitely going to be on the bubble. It might be one spot if we're getting to that point where they're thinking about getting five, but also it's all about injuries. Like where do you need more depth at the time? And always don't forget that even guys who get cut, they go to the waivers and they come back and then they're on the practice squad. So I know people get caught up on who's gonna make the roster at each position, but you know it's all about what's the fit right now, and when right now comes going to be in what 4 weeks I think.
Yeah. And the other thing too is I think Steve answered his own question because he said thinking they'll be keeping a bunch of tight ends on the roster. So Xavier Smith may be the odd man out. And I think if you're probably keeping three or four tight ends, which we haven't seen with the Rams, I think that kind of limits your
Yeah.
wide receivers and how many you keep. So
Yeah.
that's why I was saying
You'll probably keep Higby in the pup list, and you get three tight ends.
yes, yeah, with Hunter Long, Davis Allen, and Kobe Parkinson. So yeah, so three tight ends, and then maybe Tyler or Xavier make that last spot. So I think that's who's fighting for that. And I think also that's why for us it's not important to watch the preseason, but when you're thinking about who's going to make the roster, that's when it becomes why you check out preseason. But in terms of that, we'll see. But I think the wide receiver room is pretty locked up. We know who the guys are, and we know who the two guys are on the bubble. But that's a good question from C. But Gilbert, it was a good visit yesterday, going to training camp, checking out the Rams and what they're doing. It sucks that they're having a bunch of injuries, but
Yeah.
there's still a month left. They can get back healthy, and then the season will kick off, and hopefully all their guys are healthy and ready to go for the start of the season against the Lions on Sunday Night Football. But yeah, I mean, it was a good visit. Just your final thoughts, Gilbert, and then just to close us out.
I'll just end with one more extra note. Josh McCarty, when they rolled out the goal post, the field goal posts, the skinny ones, I think he made all his field goals. I didn't see a miss. They're kind of hard to
Yep,
tell when they're so thin like that, but I kept seeing the official go like this. Good, good, good. So
yep.
that was nice to see Josh McCarty drill his field goals.
And apparently, according to the special teams coordinator, he also spoke to us after the after practice, and he was saying that Tanner Brown is in a competition with Cardi. But I'm just like, I
Mm.
want to buy that, but I just you don't
Yeah.
draft a guy. I the only time I've seen it happen a couple of times, and they get rid of the kicker, but you just don't spend a draft pick on a kicker just to cut him. So I mean, as much as Tanner Brown might look good out there, I just this is Josh Carty's but we'll talk more, Gilbert, special teams, because there is a lot. I posted a video today, a short from Sean Maybeck talking about the new kickoff rule, and honestly, it's going to be an issue out there. Nobody knows what to expect. But the reason I posted that video was because he said we might not even it might not the preseason might not be an indicator as to what we actually see during the NFL. And I thought differently. So he kind of changed my mind with what he said. I thought
Mm.
we might see a little version of it in the preseason, but I do remember you saying that. Why would you give out your secrets during the preseason? You
You're
just
just
hold
gonna
them.
see people just line up properly, and that's it. All the tricks and the special things and the bells and whistles, you're not gonna see that in the regular season. But I think I talked to, I think, maybe Chase Blackman for the story. You're gonna see
Yes.
that early on, like you're not to wait long. When the regular season arrives, people are gonna throw out all their best moves because they want to steal a victory early on in the season when people are trying to figure out their S, like you mentioned.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that was the biggest thing I took away from our conversation yesterday when we were talking special teams, is that from what you talked about to with some people, it sounds like I think people want to take advantage of that rule, and they want to steal some games, and you're going to be able to, because not a lot of people are going to be prepared for that special teams and that kickoff rule, because as they said, if you find a seam, one of those dudes is going to be gone, and there goes a score, and then you're behind right off the bat. So it'll be something to kind of keep in mind. And I've also heard people saying that, hey, I don't really care about I don't want to give up a touchdown, so I'm just gonna kick it and have them take it at the 40. So, but that's everybody's gonna have their own strategy. But just to put a close on here, Gilbert, we have Delbert Salgado kind of closing things out here. Puro Cuernos, Compas Go Rams. 22 and 23 will be John Cut City. But to
I
me, they're
like
the
it.
Spider-Man meme. There we go, Gilbert. All right,
Yeah.
go ahead and close us out, Gilbert.
Yeah, good episode here. I'm starting to feel like we're getting more into the season. I know we were gone for a bit, and we kind of had a show last week where we just kind of just popped up on a Friday, and people checked it out. We appreciate the comments of people watching it, but this feels more like we're back in form here on a Wednesday evening, talking all things Rams and seeing Steve, Delbert, Flacco, Michael, Willie, seeing you guys comments. That's pretty cool to see. So once we get into full gear, we'll do a little more of these. We'll definitely be in tip top shape. But it was a good episode, and but I am ready to go, Victor. But on that note, ya nos vamos, pues, vámonos.